This is important. As Trump and the people around him continue to rewrite the history of January 6th, victims that were there that day, the Capitol police officers, are coming out and saying that they feel betrayed. Because we should all have a high level of respect for somebody who puts their life on the line to protect others, which is exactly what the Capitol police officers did on January 6th when a violent mob, stirred up by Donald Trump, stormed the U.S. Capitol with the end goal of overturning the results of the election, even if that cost Mike Pence's life. Remember, hang Mike Pence. So these officers endured punches, kicks, chemical sprays, they have PTSD after, and just all of the worst things you can imagine, all to defend democracy, all to defend our institutions when the President of the United States at the time was trying to undermine them. It came down to the individuals there at the Capitol when the president didn't want to step up, or he just didn't feel like stepping up. And now, these Capitol police officers who are there, who have PTSD, are watching in disbelief as Donald Trump continues to rewrite the history of that day, and the onus is on us to bring the truth on a day-to-day basis and remind people what happened and why it was so bad. So drop a like, comment a blue heart, and watch till the end to help boost this video in the algorithm, because I want to go over some of the statements that Capitol police officers just made and the permission structure that Trump's pardons could create in the future. Because again, Trump wants to pardon these January 6ers, and the Capitol police officers who are there are like, what the hell, man? And you know, I've said this a lot, but sometimes I feel like it's not even about the dumb fucks who broke into the Capitol on January 6th. Yes, they are idiots. They are the opposite of patriots. The fact that Trump calls them patriots is terrible. But sometimes when we get caught up debating the minutia of Ashley Babbitt and her life history or whatever the hell, we forget that if we zoom out, we don't want to miss the forest for the trees here, but if we zoom out, Donald Trump was the president of the United States, and he leveraged that position to spread lies to millions of Americans, to try to bully Brad Raffensperger and other people. Him and John Eastman came up with this unconstitutional theory that that Mike Pence could unilaterally decide the election. All of this is anti-democratic to the core, and while January 6th was terrible, we're going to go through that, and we're going to go through the exact statements. Just remember, this was all downstream. This was like Donald Trump's last resort after trying to overturn the election in 5 other ways. He tried 5 different ways, including the fake elector scheme, all of the calls with certain Secretary of States, and this is what it culminated into. So let's jump in. As Trump rewrites history, victims of the January 6th riot say they feel betrayed. For the millions of Americans who watch the presidential inauguration every 4 years, the Lower West Terrace Tunnel of the U.S. Capitol is a familiar sight. The incoming president walks through that tunnel and onto the inaugural platform before taking the oath of office. The fact that we're about to watch Trump do this we're about to watch Trump take an oath to the Constitution after he tried to shred it, is just dystopian. It's dystopian. On January 6, 2021, this tunnel was a crime scene, the site of a bloody, hours-long struggle between law enforcement and a mob of supporters for President-elect Trump. Quote, "My fellow officers and I were punched, kicked, shoved, sprayed with chemical irritants by the violent mob." Capitol Police Sergeant Aquilino Gonnell testified to Congress about his experience in the tunnel on January 6. Quote, "I could feel myself losing oxygen and recall to myself thinking, this is how I'm going to die, defending this entrance." Now, Trump is poised to walk through that same tunnel again as the president-elect after he successfully campaigned on a message that people convicted and charged of crimes for their actions on January 6 are political prisoners and patriots who deserve presidential pardons. I also want to talk about how right-wing militias will grow over the next 4 years, but we'll get to that. Trump opened his first rally of the presidential campaign with a rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner recorded from a jailhouse phone by January 6 defendants, including an alleged Nazi sympathizer and others accused of the violent assault. During the campaign, he referred to January 6 as a day of love. And this is just an aside. I think it's largely a failure on Republicans for not holding Trump accountable, but also Democratic messaging has to be uniquely weak for us to not be able to push back on this stuff, right? Democrats should have the infrastructure within the media, within digital media, on YouTube, to be able to tell people January 6th was terrible. Why is Donald Trump able to control the narrative and convince large portions of the country that these people are patriots? That's just an aside about the future of the digital media space, and we're working to fix that right now. I'm working on a project behind the scenes. I won't get too far into it, but I want to be able to push back on this narrative effectively. For Gonnell and other victims of that day's violence, Trump's electoral victory was a gut punch. Quote, "It feels sometimes like, what did I risk my life for?" Gonnell told NPR. Gonnell said his injuries from January 6 were so severe that he needed to undergo 2 surgeries and ultimately had to retire from the Capitol Police. He's watched as Republican lawmakers some of whom he defended from the rioters, have downplayed the severity of the violence. Absolutely disgusting. Quote, all of these elected officials, they don't care about the officers, people like myself that put their lives on the line to protect them, he said. We did our job and gave them the time to escape, to evacuate the building, and they seem to have forgotten the fear that Donald Trump's mob made them feel. Gonnell immigrated to the United States from the Dominican Republic. I'd like to play a quick clip from him speaking to the DNC just to honor him.
My name is Aquilino Gonnell. I immigrated to the U.S. from the Dominican Republic when I was 12. I became an American citizen. I was a sergeant in the U.S. Army and a Capitol Police officer. I had seen violence while serving in Iraq, but nothing prepared me for January 6th. We officers risked everything to protect innocent people. We were beaten and blinded. I was assaulted with a pole attached to the American flag. President Trump summoned our attackers and sided with them. He betrayed us. When I joined the Army and Capitol Police, I took an oath to defend the Constitution. I did so with duty in my soul, and I still feel it.
That was Aquilino Gonnell at the DNC, and I just want to point out that this dude who immigrated to the United States has respected our Constitution more than the president-elect. This dude, Gonnell, this sergeant, I don't know why I'm calling him dude, he has genuinely risked his life for this country. His career was ended because he was protecting the Capitol and he was injured and he had to do 2 surgeries after, and he hasn't gotten the respect that he's deserved from any Republican congressman. But I think that we should be talking about this relentlessly. Over the next 4 years, when they try to say they're the party of law and order, we need to be dominating the narrative and showing them that they're the opposite. Quote, I've done everything that was asked of me, Gonnell said. I love this country, and it feels like the country doesn't love me back. I want to finish this article in a second, but this takes me over to this article that I read yesterday. If you haven't seen the video about the militias I made yesterday, check it out, because this ties perfectly into it. Just to read the highlights of it. A wilderness survivor trainer spent years undercover climbing the ranks of right-wing militias. He didn't tell police or the FBI. He didn't even tell his family or friends. He penetrated a new generation of militia leaders, including doctors, government attorneys, OBGYNs, people from all across the spectrum. Even sheriffs were helping them out, and he sent ProPublica a massive trove of documents. But the interesting piece right here is this line. It says, experts say that militias could have a renaissance under Donald Trump. Renaissance is a weird word to use there, but if you think about it, Donald Trump, in pardoning these January 6ers, will create this permission structure for other far-right militias and extremist groups. Now, Trump's actions send a clear message. As long as you're acting in his favor, violence will not only be excused, it might even be rewarded with fame or a career. Meanwhile, the people who are defending and protecting the Capitol, Trump would never say this guy's name. He would never even say Gonnell's name. Could you imagine being in Sergeant Aquilino Gonnell's spot and seeing Donald Trump just try to claim to be the dude of law and order and basically escape all accountability while you're still struggling to pay off your medical bills? The Justice Department has described the January 6th attack as an act of domestic terrorism that threatened the nation's peaceful transfer of power. Prosecutors estimated that 140 officers suffered injuries that day. One of the officers who was assaulted was Brian Sicknick. During the riot, a man attacked Sicknick with a chemical spray. Later that evening, Sicknick collapsed in the U.S. Capitol and was rushed to the hospital. The next day, January 7th, he died. The Office of the Chief Medical Examiner in Washington later stated that Sicknick had died of natural causes, the result of 2 strokes, while noting that all that transpired played a role in his condition. Sicknick's family blames Trump for his death and campaigned against his re-election. Quote, what I'm very upset about that might happen is that he's going to let all of those people out of jail, said Gladys Sicknick, Brian's mother. It's just not right. Trump has not detailed which of the more than 1,500 people charged in the connection with the attack might receive pardons. In 2024, he told interviewers of the National Association of Black Journalists that he was open to pardoning defendants convicted of assaulting police because, quote, they were convicted by a very, very tough system. Trump is not a patriot. The people who support him, or support this in particular, are not patriots. It's almost offensive to try to call them such. This could include the man who pleaded guilty to assaulting Brian Sicknick. Caroline Leavitt, a spokeswoman for the Trump-Vance transition, said in an emailed statement, quote, "The American people did not fall for the left's fear-mongering over January 6th. They re-elected President Trump by a resounding margin because they want him to unify our country through success, and that's exactly what he will do." I mean, again, it's disgusting. It honestly makes me sad that we have lost control of the January 6th narrative to such an extent that you and I know all of the details about that in the fake elector scheme, but the Democratic Party needed to be relentlessly messaging about this, and I guess they did. But I'm going to be doing daily live streams soon where we run through the January 6th investigation. We run through the document, because if Trump's going to be targeting Liz Cheney and investigating Liz Cheney, we're going to have to be the resistance, or the resistance that is so sophisticated we understand exactly where they are lying. The statement did not provide any specifics about which defendants they're referring to, but Caroline Leavitt said, quote, "Unlike Joe Biden, who just commuted the sentences of murderers, child predators, and other violent criminals, President Trump will pardon Americans who were denied due process and unfairly prosecuted." But who's going to be the arbiter of who had an unfair prosecution? It's going to be Trump and his team. So they're going to say all of these were unfair. For victims of the January 6th attack, the attempt to whitewash and downplay the events of that day has been especially difficult. Charles Sicknick, Brian's father, said he has lost friends over their skepticism about the insurrection. Quote, "I try not to associate with people who are Trump people, and I have lifelong friends that I don't associate with anymore because of what happened." Quote, "To them, it's not a big deal because it wasn't their son, you know." Craig Sicknick, Brian's older brother, said the grief of losing his little brother and the minimization of January 6th has changed him. He's prone to online fights over politics now. Me and you both, buddy. Me and you both. Quote, "I'm not nice. I used to be nice. Used to be decent. I don't tolerate it anymore." He said, quote, "I've turned into a much angrier, crankier person. People don't like me. I don't care." And of course, when you lose a family member, especially a son or a little brother, it's stressful. It's traumatic. The Sicknick family is held close to Brian's memory. A table sits near the front of the house filled with commendations, including a Congressional Gold Medal and a Presidential Citizen's Medal. This man was a better man than Donald Trump and his minions will ever be, and I'll leave it at that. I just want to say one more time, the broader implications here are that if Donald Trump's calling these people patriots, the January 6th insurrectionists that were beating police officers with an American flag, he's giving them a green light to act on their worst intentions because he'll pardon them. They know that whether it's targeting political opponents or storming the Capitol or threatening people or intimidating voters at a polling station, there are going to be no consequences as long as they serve Trump's goals. It's not just about loyalty with Trump. He cares a lot about loyalty, but it's also about erasing accountability and muddying the waters. Something that I'm scared about is that in 50 years, when we look back on the January 6th committee and the report they produced, will it be untainted, or will Trump's endless investigations into Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, and everyone else over the 4 years, will he be able to muddy the waters? Well, the onus is going to be on us. Can we hold strong and every single day make sure we're reminding people what happened on January 6th while Trump is trying to muddy the waters by finding, my worry is he'll find one email that Liz Cheney sent in 2022, and that email is somehow going to be proof that there's this big conspiracy, and then they're going to say, look the entire January 6th committee was a sham. They already say that without any evidence. So then they're going to work backwards from their conclusion and try to find some evidence. And again, we have to stay strong so that in 40 years, people are going to be looking back on Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger as heroes who defended our democracy when Trump was trying to threaten them. And people will look back on Brian Sicknick. I mean, we see this now. We know that Brian Sicknick is a hero now, but the fact that most Americans don't understand this is a failure of messaging on our part, and Trump is escaping accountability. I'll leave it at that. Drop a like, subscribe. Love you guys. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.